In this episode, we're doing another one of these wonderful 18th century German recipes. This one's called Eingelaufene Soup. Thanks for joining us today. This recipe is simple, it's inexpensive, really quick to make. So it's going to be a great one whether you're in the field or you can do this at home. If you're a historical reenactor, it's going to be a good one. And if you just want to try it at home, of course, this one is going to be great also. It starts off with beef broth. I've already got some pre-prepared beef broth here. You can use bone broth. You can even check out our episode that we did on bone broth, or even portable soup could be used if you're out in the field. But first, we're just going to pour, I think I've got, I don't know, a quart. So it really depends on exactly how many people you want to serve. I've got about a quart here. Let's get this on the fire. This needs to come up to a boil. Now comes the batter part of this recipe. It's a very simple batter with just a couple of ingredients. Calls for 2 eggs. Just gonna whisk these guys up. I'm gonna add just a touch of milk to thin this up a little bit. And now it calls actually for 3 spoonfuls of flour. And we don't know how big our spoonfuls are here. So I'm just guessing that this is an appropriate spoonful here. I may only go with 2 spoonfuls. Let's get this flour whisked in. There's another spoonful. We'll go ahead and get 3 spoonfuls in there. And we're gonna add milk until we get to a batter. And the recipe says something like thicker than omelet batter, a thickish batter. So I'm looking for a right kind of runny consistency. You don't want it to pour right off, but you definitely want it to come off of this. You don't want it to stick to the thing. So that's what we're shooting for consistency. We probably want to make sure that it stays this consistency. You know, if you're like waiting for that to boil over here, we have to make sure that this stays this consistency. It could be that as it kind of sets for a little bit, it'll get too thick. We don't want it to be like that. So if it gets too thick, if it gets thicker than this and it's already starting to thicken up a little bit, add a little bit more milk. Make sure that when you're ready to put it in, it's this kind of consistency. Okay, let me check on the broth. So our broth is up to a boil. We want to have a nice, steady, rolling boil. Now we've got this nice, soupy batter here, not too soupy. And we start to drizzle this in slowly, okay? So we're gonna drizzle this in. And what it ends up doing, if you're hitting the right temperature and the right consistency here, we're getting some little noodles. It's like making instant noodles as it boils. Now it's boiling again. Each time I put it in, it kind of slows it down. We also want to watch and not pour it right on top of noodles that are already forming. Okay, so I am battling this. It's going to be a lot easier. If you're in a modern kitchen, you can put this over your stove and you can get the temperature to really sit down and be right. Here, I've got to battle this fire. It's giant and then it's small. You kind of got to get a feel for exactly how much you want to put in, because obviously at some point you might have more batter than really what the broth will take. So you can't fill it all up with this stuff. But as you can see, it's making these little sort of, again, instant noodles. It's a great process. It's really fun. Okay, this is looking really good. It's basically cooked up. I let it kind of set a little bit longer with these guys cooking in there, but most of them are pretty small, so they are kind of instantly cooked. As soon as they kind of all come up to the surface, we know it's good. I just let this, basically boil for a minute or 2 more. Looks really good, so I'm gonna take it off the fire. There we go. It looks really good. It's smelling really good. It takes one last little ingredient here. I've got some butter. It's a big, nice spoonful of butter. And we're gonna put the butter in there and let it melt. And let me stir this around just a hair. Now we can go ahead and serve this up into a bowl. This looks great. Let's go ahead and try this out. Well, here it is, and of course, we've got some wonderful beef brothy smell going on with this, and it looks fun. Maybe a little, I guess some people might look at it and say, oh, I don't know if that's going to be good, right? Well, we'll find out. Excellent soup with some really interesting texture because of our kind of noodles. And depending on, you know, the water was boiling pretty furiously. And as you're pouring it in, depending on the consistency of your batter, it's either going to make big kind of noodles in there or small ones. And if the water's boiling too furiously, it's going to make really small ones. And if the batter's too thin, it'll make small ones. Such a great and wonderful recipe. And maybe if you're in this area, probably other areas of North America, you may already recognize this dish in modern cuisine as possibly under multiple names. The one I might know it by is Rivels. And the German word, Eingelaufene, I think is something like that. I tried to push it through some translation software, and I got run-in for the translation, or probably something like drizzle or pour in or something like that, which kind of makes sense. And so it is such an interesting recipe. It does show up in today's cookbook, sometimes made a little bit differently than this, but this one is so easy, so fun, and right out of the 18th century German cookbooks. I really want to thank the folks down at Old Salem. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, for working on this cookbook project. I think it's called, I don't think it's out yet. I don't think it's published. It's called The Raised Hearth. They're still working on getting that ready. And you can go down and make sure to check out their website. It's Old Salem in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I want to thank the folks down there. And I want to thank you for coming along as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.